The only truth that we can see within existence is ironically non-existence. A part of truth is a sense of shared acceptance, an objective sense of accuracy. We all die in this world of existence, and so therefore truth lies within some form of the non-existent. My hunger for the singular truth that unites all led me down a path of deeply reflecting over many philosophies, and ultimately I discovered that every deeper spiritual ideology points to non-existence in some way or form. The experience after death is the final destination. And that makes sense. And non-existence might sound scary, but I use the term non-existence to carry across an unexplainable essence, which is essentially what we become one with once we die. To be honest, what makes existence wholesome is the moments where we encounter non-existence. When we are in love, we lose the sense of I and identity. We become one with love's totality, which is why healthy love can be a reminder of transcendence in the material, because inwardly we merge with the infinite non-duality of love through a dual finite being. And the two dualities, in a sense, forget the duality, as the lover thinks only of the beloved. Likewise, let's say when we are enjoying a hobby or activity, when we enter a flow state with it, we lose the sense of I and identity. We become one with the sense of flow, one with the sense of bliss. We tend to cling and focus deeply on the sense of I and the sense of self, but to be completely honest, the sense of I is what causes us pain in many cases. When you see, why am I sad? Why is this happening to me? Etc. Almost every painful circumstance is an acknowledgement of duality. Buddha mentions that we need to be free from cause and effect, meaning that we are part of a cause and simultaneously part of an effect. We are causing and affecting others. We are witnessing the effects of an effect, right? Likewise, in Neville, you reap what you sow. So you go back to being consciously aware of the cause in order to better reap the effect. And cause and effect can only exist with duality, and that's why duality solely is painful. You hurt me, you did this. And we essentially separate and individuate the I part of ourselves, losing ourselves in this seamlessly hopeless abyss of our material self and mind. Truly, when we really are at peace, we encounter emerging with oneness, a sense of non-duality, and a feeling that the material I is becoming a part of something greater than ourselves. This is why love can be so important yet so deadly. The essential reason we want love is to experience the loss of the I and the dissolving into the greater essence of love. Sure, there's some duality to it, but it really merges well with non-duality. But what happens is we accidentally go back to soul dualistic thinking when we block ourselves to love's non-duality by focusing on separation and you and me, and all of a sudden we self-sabotage by turning the non-duality of love into the duality and push and pull of attachment. Attachment dwells completely in finite forms, when you grasp outwardly. Rather, a non-dual kind of love is something that's free-flowing and doesn't rely on only two people. It's more of an essence that just simply exists by itself. So, non-existence is not something to be afraid of. Non-duality is not something to be afraid of. It's just something that's greater than what we are and which we currently exist in. So non-existence, as described by ancient Indian philosophy, specifically Advaitavedanta, and I recommend Mandukya Upanishad for more insight, but they describe non-existence as a cessation of the self and a melting and a merging with bliss. It's essentially knowing that the self does not exist and never did exist. It's like and ancient Indian philosophy uses this example of like when you see the whites of the wave, it emerges from the ocean. It looks different from the ocean, but it's still the ocean, and then it dissolves back into the ocean. It's non-existent. It's just temporarily an illusion, essentially. And so when atheists, to go back to non-existence, right? When atheists say that God doesn't exist, they're right, because God doesn't exist in an existence sense of perspective. God's purest form can only exist in non-existence, in something unmeasurable, something that's outside of material experience. And Neville says, my Father and I are one. My Father is greater than I. So even if we are God in an almost pantheistic sense, that true essence is beyond our perception. And when we meditate, we are only scratching the surface, but scratching the surface and realizing, hey, I'm infinite love is a lot better than not scratching the surface. And so, love and non-existence, what is the connection there? Sufism, mystic Islam, talks about love being the same as non-existence. Within non-existence, there can only be love. Within love, there's non-existence. So Sufis use the word annihilation, fana, and while it might sound scary, it's more so a complete annihilation of the individual self in pursuit of the totality and cohesion of love. And so a beautiful line in one of my favorite movies, Dilse, is a line where Shah Rukh Khan tells Manisha Koirala that he sees nothingness in her eyes, implying he essentially sees the bliss of non-existence within her eyes, and that his love for her is something transcendent, because it brings the material into the metaphysical. Now, onto Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard doesn't really use non-existence as one of his main terms, but he does talk about infinite love being embraced by infinite love, and that this was his last lifetime as a spiritual teacher. So basically, he was saying he was leaving existence into non-existence to become one with infinite love, which I personally equate to as non-existence. So it's interesting because Neville particularly describes it as both duality and non-duality, so you know your individuated self, but also are in a state of oneness with all. This sense of duality and non-duality cannot be explained, as both the terms are in itself contradictory to the other, but the beauty lies in how intriguing it is, and how otherworldly experiencing both duality and non-duality, it's just very, I guess not otherworldly, but it's just unexplainable to experience both duality and non-duality, right? So the best way I can explain it is that with our limited human mind is essentially reflecting over water drops. I first learned this analogy in ancient Indian philosophy, and it has stuck with me since. We are each water drops, seemingly separated, but consisting of the same quality and essence. When we awaken and intuitively merge with non-existence, non-existence can be referred to as the ocean. It is the whole, the cohesion, the totality, and each drop that trickles down and then merges with the ocean is essentially our human experience. There is duality in the sense that we are drops of the ocean. There's also a non-dual conclusion that, the drops are no longer separated. We are now going to become fully one with the ocean. So, our deepest wound as humans is thinking purely in terms of duality and of existence. The sense of being separate from something and beautiful, and that being separate from something that's beautiful and blissful is painful, because it reminds us of duality and separation, when at our core we are non-dual beings. So the moments we get glimmers of non-existence within existence is a desperation that arises. And this desperation isn't inherently bad, because it's showing us, hey, we know there's something more to life, something that's more beautiful and amazing and esoteric and lovely than this material calamity that we find ourselves in. But then we think, the mirage is actually the water. It's actually the ocean. So we're always chasing, we're always thirsty. We're at our core obsessively existential, and we're always trying to run away from that. And so when the beauty we see in the material, when we realize it's an aspect of divinity, it's not the completeness of divinity. You can only experience that when you really connect to divinity that's independent of the world. Then the world becomes beautiful, because you don't hold on to it for your life, but appreciate it as an extension of the divine. And the process of that's where you love what you have, but you're also willing to let it go. I sometimes walk by this apartment, and there's this parrot that lives on, I'd say, the 5th floor, and I can hear it squawking, and it's tied up to the balcony. And I always feel sorry for it, because it reminds me of how sometimes we try to grasp onto these material things because we sense the glimmer of divinity in them, but then we grasp at it so much that we end up chaining both ourselves and the material thing or being to this imprisonment. Likewise, the parrot probably is happiest when it's free, right? Free to fly instead of being chained up. And to chain these wild animals because of our own attachment to them is selfish. We don't value the freedom of another, but seek the freedom of bliss by wrongly confining it to something outside of us. And then, in pursuit of feeling free, we become unfree. We say to the outside, hey, give me bliss. And the true bliss is when you get rid of give me, and there's simply bliss. There's no you to be given bliss. There's simply only bliss. And that's a form of letting go that's, well, not everyone can comprehend it. I think it's Khalil Gibran, amazing poet, in his poetry says that if you love something, let it go. It returns to you. It's yours forever. There are a lot of these successful SB stories where they lived in the end and essentially realized that the love for this person, both from them and towards them, always existed inside. And so you let go of the physical world. Let it go. And you find love inside you. You access the eternal form of someone's love inside you. And then they return to you in the material as the shadow, as the result, as the response. But you let go of the outside. You find it inside. And then the outside reflects. Because your love for someone and the love for you is a glimmer of infinite love. So therefore it's like 2 drops from the ocean. It's the same substance. So when you access the divine, you also access the source of all the love you've experienced and ever experienced. And you realize you're not separated from anyone. And that's a non-dual perspective. And we still have to operate in a world duality, so freedom is such an important part of our human relations. Because before understanding the wholeness and non-duality comes from infinite love inside us, we try to cling to merging with people and external things on the outer level. And that can be an issue because we need to be free in a dual sense. For example, one needs to let the partner have their own life, their own interests. And yes, we all love the beauty of sex, affection, or intimacy, where we can experience non-existence within existence and non-duality with a dual being. We still have to acknowledge that we're dual beings and we have to operate on the rules of duality. And so a big part of that is realizing the internal oneness and the craving for non-duality is access inside of us, and that you must let the material world be free. And to bring a bit of the nerd in me, the 10th Doctor in Doctor Who says, you don't need to own the universe, just see it. And so there's an old saying where a man is gifted a golden cup he loves very much. He loves the cup each day and is grateful for it. But the key is he knows the cup will break one day somehow. He's like, I love you, cup, grateful for you, but one day you'll break. And so, years go on and someone breaks the cup and everyone thinks the old man's gonna panic because he always appreciated the cup, but he just simply cleans it up and lets it go. So he understood that he didn't own the cup, meaning the cup wasn't actually his. He borrowed it, but eventually had to return it to the ways of life. He can't cling to existence because everything returns to non-existence. Likewise, he also can't cling to his sense of self because that's always ever changing and also returning to non-existence. This is the main Buddhist ideology, that we need to stop the reincarnation cycle and extinguish the flame of existence into non-existence. To bring my own ideas, this is why love to me is permanent, and why when someone passes away, it's simply returning them. Because they weren't ours, meaning that their finite material form isn't ours, but they return to love, which is who we truly are, and who we return to ourselves. So we never lose people. Not in a deeper sense. We just end up all uniting in a spiritual sense. We return to each other, the essence of each other that truly mattered. So we can't own the dual version of people. We realize and discover that we are the same foundation of love. So the story of the soul in infinite love is the greatest love story of all. In that sense, the separation is angst, is mirages. The end of each story is that marriage, that unity, that happy ending where soul becomes one with infinite love. And how that story takes place is highly subjective. No 2 paths are the same. No philosophy is the same. But each of these philosophical ways of interpreting the journey and the way you dictate the path is up to you. But the destination, whether it's Taoism, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Sufism, whether it's Hinduism, essentially end up being the same. Which is why if you focus your ideology too much on the destination, you realize you can't focus all on the destination because the destination is unexplainable. Which is why we're so obsessed with describing the path we're on to get there. Because we can't explain non-existence. We can't explain, the destination. But we're on the path and we can overthink the path that we use to get there, essentially. And so, to see the destination means you're at the destination. You can't be on the path and completely understand the destination. You can get a deep sense of knowing where the path is leading, but you only understand the destination when you're actually there. So I can't tell you to walk my path. You can look behind yourself and see your own path and look at me and say, hey, we arrive at the same place anyways. Does it really matter if I took the grassy road and you took the sunflower road? It really doesn't at the end of the day. And I'm just thinking over now, the title of this video, Becoming One with Non-Existence, is also inaccurate, because I'm still using material brain, material words on a material microphone to explain and sense non-existence. But non-existence can't be understood while existing, not totally. So to know the essence of non-existence and infinite love is to simultaneously realize you know nothing at all. And I suppose those who are passionate about mysticism end up being thought of as mad, as crazy, and it makes sense. Because Einstein described insanity as doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I try to explain the divine, infinite love, non-existence, etc. through words, poetry, and my material self. Yet I know I'll never be able to. I know this fully well. I'm never going to be able to explain infinite love to you. But I keep trying. I do it over and over and again. You know? Isn't that madness? Thank you for listening.